There's something that I hear from a lot of guitar players who want to get into soloing, and it's this. They learn how to play a scale or even a few scales, and yet when they try to solo, they just can't really make it sound musical or interesting. And naturally that results into some crippling self-doubt, which we do not need. I mean, we're guitar players. We got enough issues as it is. All joking aside, I do want to address this phenomenon, why it's happening to so many guitar players, and if it's something that you're currently dealing with, I want to show you exactly how to address it. But as always, be sure to stick around to the very end of the lesson because I've got a gift for you and your guitar that you're both gonna love. Okay, so improvisation, soloing, scales. Let's talk about them. Now, if you want to get into soloing and improv, naturally you're gonna want to learn some scales to give you something to work with. And scales are indeed a fantastic tool to help introduce you to getting tonalities, right? The difference between minor and major and how they sound when you apply them to melody. But unfortunately for a lot of guitar players, myself included, I went through the same thing. We learn these scales and then we get caught in this trap to where all we really know is the scale and not really the music within. So let's take, for example, an extremely popular scale, the A minor pentatonic scale. Right? Generally, when we learn it, we don't learn just the 5 notes of the scale, right? We learn the 2 octaves, and beyond that cover all 6 strings. So we learn this entire pattern. And if for some reason you don't already know it, let me go ahead and show it to you. Starting on the low E string, it's 5, 8, and then 5, 7 on A, 5, 7 on D, 5, 7 on G, 5, 8 on B, and 5, 8 on high E. So this whole pattern is actually the same scale twice and some extra notes. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5 notes in the pentatonic scale. The actual musical content of the scale is contained within those 5 notes. And then we have it again at an upper octave. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 2 additional notes. And of course it just, if you were to continue going up the high E string, you could keep going. But obviously we want to keep it to this linear pattern that covers all 6 strings. So what we'll do is we'll learn this scale and we'll be like, huzzah, I now have the power in my hands. I can now rock and roll with the best of them. Not so fast. There's some things you gotta know first. And first among them is a scale doesn't automatically translate into music. In fact, like I said earlier, a scale is a tool. You wanna learn how to properly utilize the tool, but what gives you the use, right, is not so much the tool itself, but it's how you use the tool, right? In other words, when you learn a scale, you also have to learn how to use it, and just playing it up and down isn't really using it. Not for anything musical, at least. I mean, maybe you could say it's useful for exercises, but when you're ready to solo or improvise and express yourself musically, do you want to just be exercising the whole time? Now you might still say, hey Eddie, I don't just exercise the scale, I really try to make it sound musical. I use every single note in that scale pattern and I still can't make it work. Well, my friend, therein lies the problem, because if you still don't know how to use a scale, or if you've never really tried to actually use it, you're just kind of shooting in the dark. You're just Hail Marys, all around. You're trying to just do something and see what lands, And that's okay, it's fine to experiment, but sometimes that can lead to a lot of frustration and feed into that crippling self-doubt that I'm talking about. So if you really want this scale to serve its purpose by being a tool for you to musically express yourself, my advice is to just take a small fragment of it and get to know that first. Force yourself to get all the ideas you possibly can out of that tiny little fragment, and then graduate to the other notes in the scale. Because what you're going to be building for yourself is a foundational habit of actually using the notes. If you have so many notes, you're kind of spreading its usefulness, or at least your lack of understanding on how to use it, right, over a lot more notes. But we just want to narrow it down to a really, really small little fragment here. So here's what I'm going to tell you to do. You're going to take the 5th and 7th frets of just the D and the G strings. Just that middle octave box within the entire pentatonic scale pattern, that is all we're going to focus on. This is going to be our playground. The limits of this little box here is what we're going to be using. We're going to force ourselves to make some cool sounds come out of it. Now, how do you do that? It's not just from playing it up and down, right? This whole point is to discourage noodling and just aimlessly wandering through the scale. We're trying to narrow it down, and we're going to be using all kinds of little guitar linguistics like hammer-ons, slides, bends, vibrato, you know, trills. Little things that we can do to just really maximize and just really make those notes extra expressive, but we're still gonna be staying within this little box, okay? And now that we've set these limits, we're gonna take it a step further and we're gonna start off just with the root note, which is right here, 7th fret of the D string. That's our root note. We're gonna start with just that before we even use the other 3. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna throw in a backing track for just a little bit, and I'm just gonna be playing that root note and really getting some use out of it. So in that quick example, what I was doing was I took the root note and then I gave it some rhythm. You know, I gave it some timing, try to find a little pocket of where to put it over the backing track. Listening to the backing track just to kind of get a feel for the vibe musically, and then just throwing in this kind of like rock, sort of strummy, mutey thing, like, you know, and that worked. Oh, and hey, real quick, if you're getting value out of this lesson, please give it a like and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Not only is it a huge help for us, but it lets us know that you like these lessons and you'd like to see more of them. So I thank you in advance, and let's get right back to it. And here's the best part. Just by establishing that little sense of rhythm, it's already gonna positively influence how I use additional notes. So I'm gonna throw the backing track back on, I'm gonna go back to that little motif that I did with the root note, and then see how it influences how I use the other notes. Okay, so I started off with just adding a little bit of that rhythm on that root note, you know, and then I just started to kind of influence the following lines that I sort of heard in my head and was able to bring them out on the fretboard. And it was a lot easier because I was just working with just those 4 notes. So when you limit yourself in this way, just by having this little pentatonic box, for example, to work with, you're minimizing the amount of overplaying, of noodling, of aimlessly wandering up and down a scale. It really boils it down to making those notes count. And if even those 4 notes might be a little bit much to work with in the beginning, that's totally fine too. Start with the root note, and all you gotta do is just give it some rhythm. Doesn't matter if it's a rock backing track or a blues backing track, whatever. Find something that you can play A minor pentatonic over, and just start with that root note and just find a little rhythm, something repetitive, but something to kind of get your groove on, you know? You can do that with just 1 note. And if you were to do that, imagine what, you know, the kind of thought process that you're gonna have when you start to incorporate other notes, because you're already gonna be thinking, you're gonna be in the proper mindset thinking about the timing, the rhythm, right? Because time, feel, and stuff like that is super important to really executing a solo. It's not about the notes you play, it's also about, you know, what you don't play and how you use the notes that you do play. And a lot of that really just comes down to time, feel, and you don't need a lot of notes to be able to do that. And as a final note, think of it this way. You don't need 12 sentences to say something that you can convey in just 4 words. It's the same basic principle here. You don't need a whole bunch of notes in order to speak in earnest, right? When you're doing that musically, it's an honest expression of yourself. You don't need a whole lot of notes to do that. But I'm telling you, if you focus on just a handful of notes to build that habit in, imagine how you're gonna use all the additional notes that you add onto that, right? So if you can make 4 notes sound good, you can definitely make 8 notes sound good, you can definitely make 16 notes sound good. No matter how much it exponentially increases, you can make those notes sound good. But if you think to yourself that you need 1,000,000 notes in order to sound good, that is incorrect thinking, my friend. You can sound good with just a few notes in the same way that you can express yourself and say something with just a few words. So I really want you to take this to heart and apply it to your playing from now on. Now that you've learned this, you cannot unlearn it, okay? So just get into the habit of making a few notes work for you, and I promise you, that crippling self-doubt will start to get a whole lot quieter. Now today we explore this concept using the A minor pentatonic scale. But what if I told you that you can actually apply this to every musical key, whether it's major or minor? Oh yes, you absolutely can. And now that you've made it to the end of the lesson, I'm gonna make good on my promise and give you that free gift I was telling you about that just so happens to be the very thing that's gonna show you how to play all that stuff in different keys. This, my dear friend, is a free lesson on how to instantly solo in any key. It's gonna take the concepts that we learned today and show you how to apply them all over the fretboard in every possible musical key in record time, I'm telling you. And it's 100% yours, 100% free. All you gotta do is click the link here to claim your copy or check the link in the description box. I will always be a less is more advocate when it comes to musical expression. And while I also see the value in playing fast, I've been moved by more solos using less notes in the same way that I've been moved by more speeches using less words.